This is the Rich Dad Radio Show. The good news and bad news about money. Here's Robert Kiyosaki.
Hello. Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show, the good news and bad news about money. And today we have a very important show for each and every one of you. The Rich Dad Radio Show is dedicated to the question, how much courage do you have? You know, courage is a very, very important word. There was a saying years ago, I should misquoting it, but it says, evil only exists when good men do nothing. And there's a lot of evil in this world. I mean, massive, all over the world. And what makes me nauseous is I notice a lot of people just letting it go, not saying anything. If you mention it, you know, politically it's called being a whistleblower or something like that. You know, people just shun you. So most people are chicken. You know, they don't have the courage to stand up to corruption. And the reason there is so much corruption in the world today is because most people are chicken little. You know, they're so afraid I might lose my job. I don't want to offend my friends. You know, well, he's my friend even though he's cheating on his wife or the company. I don't want to say anything, you know. And I think the biggest problem in our world, we can blame our politicians, like, you know, President Trump is going after with Comey, and Comey's FBI director is going after Trump, and they're standing up and fighting and all this. I don't know who's telling the truth. They're both probably lying. But most people don't have the guts because they're chicken. You know, they're just chicken. And that's what our subject is today. So the question is, are you... And are you complaining about all the corruption in the world, but you're the cause of it because you're... So that's what we're going to talk about today. Courage versus corruption. And God knows we have so much corruption because most people have no courage. That's what we're talking about. So today we have very special guests. We have Councilman Sal DeCiccio, who's been a great friend, real estate developer who went suicidal and joined city council and took on the corruption in Arizona government. Holy mackerel, I mean, that is a cesspool. And then we have James Dooley. And James Dooley is, he worked as a United Press International reporter in Honolulu in 1973. And he later joined the staff of the Honolulu Advertiser, where he was an investigative reporter for 20 years. And he is the author of the book, Sunny Skies, Shady Characters, Cops, Killers, and Corruption in the Aloha State of Hawaii. And the reason I was just in Hawaii a few months ago, and I was cruising through this bookstore, and I have a good fortune of being sensitive. You know, books talk to me and went, psst, psst, you know, buy me. And I look down and there's this book, Sunny Skies and Shady Characters by James Dooley. Now, I don't know who James Dooley is, but I do know the shady characters. And the reason I know those shady characters is because my poor dad, Ralph H. Kiyosaki, had the courage to quit his job, to run against his boss, the governor of Hawaii, because they were so corrupt. So my poor dad lost everything. That's why he was poor. He's a PhD, but he had the guts to stand up to Governor Burns and then later Governor Ariyoshi. In my opinion, some of the most corrupt men, but I couldn't say anything. And then here I am last couple of months ago walking through Waikiki, and there's James Dooley's books, and he's writing about what my father spoke about. So James Dooley, I give you a lot of courage because the guys you mentioned in your book, Sunny Skies and Shady Characters, I'm surprised you still have feet to walk on, you know, because they buried a lot of people in shallow graves. And Forbes magazine called Hawaii the People's Republic of Hawaii because it's so corrupt. You know, it's run by the labor unions and all of these characters and, you know, gambling and the Japanese mafia. And I've never seen such corrupt people, and they're corrupt primarily because they're cowards. But my dad, poor dad, he stood up to him. He says, I'm going to run against you. And he got crushed. So all these years later, as I come back and I'm reading your book, James, Sunny Skies and Shady Characters. And I wish my father was alive so he could read it. You know, so thank you for the courage to write that book, this book.
It's my pleasure, and I'm happy to talk to you.
And so Sal DiCiccio also has the courage. He's always writing papers everybody gets angry at him for. But what are some of the things you've been writing about, Sal, in the corruption of Arizona and Phoenix government?
Well, and it is corrupt. And when I talk about corrupt, what it does is that you hear the word deep state quite a bit. And
what does that mean?
That's exactly what I don't know what it means, but I do know what it means in terms of an entrenched bureaucracy that only protects themselves. It's a corruption. And what they do is they literally take out this bureaucracy that everyone trusts, and they call it government. And I've proven this through these papers that I've written. They literally go out and they actually go out there and find ways to benefit only themselves. And one of the examples I use in my paper here is that we have a affordable housing project, the most expensive apartment project ever sold in the city of Phoenix, ever, in one of the nicest areas of Phoenix, 26th and Camelback. It's the Biltmore area, sold for right at $277,000 a unit. The city of Phoenix is building affordable housing apartment complex in one of the worst areas of Phoenix on land that they already own at $281,000 a unit. What's happening is the government becomes their own contractor. They take these monies in that are meant for the poor, they're meant for the disadvantaged, and they keep it themselves because they've got to find ways to pay themselves off. It's a total corruption. So what you see is you have insiders that benefit from this, but the insiders are protected by some of the people on the outside that are given these special tax incentives. It's so corrupt.
Right, and you have a paper, the Phoenix City Manager is to release a budget to increase the pension debt by $2.3 billion, which is how they pay themselves.
That's exactly how they pay themselves.
So James, I've been, when I found your book, Sunny Skies and Shady Characters, this is in 2017, years after my father ran for office, the first shady character you mention is a guy named Don Ho. Now, if you're old enough, you know who Don Ho is. How come you started with Don Ho?
Well, it's because most people are familiar with the name. He's an entertainer. Tiny Bubbles is a famous song. Most people are kind of familiar with him, and I sort of wanted to start with somebody that is kind of generally known, and most people have a very good opinion of him. I certainly, he was a fine entertainer, great singer. And all that, but he had some alarming friends, and I had spent a lot of time investigating and writing stories about some of the people that were around Don Ho.
Well, James, you described going into his inner sanctum like what you call it, Sal, deep something. Yeah. You went in there and actually confronted the guy. Are you nuts? Are you nuts?
Well, as I said, and please call me Jim.
Jim, okay.
I'm uncomfortable with James, but
I want to call you Sir Dooley now, man. I tell you,
it wasn't my idea. It was another reporter who was working on a story about an allegation that Don Ho had sexually assaulted, a couple of teenage or tourist women. The other reporter was working on the story, and he didn't want to go down there alone. And I told him, I don't blame you. I don't want to go down there at all. And so, but anyway, I went with him, and we encountered Don and some of the people that he had in his inner circle, and who were some of the scariest people in the state of Hawaii.
Some of his physical advisors, right?
Yes. One of them was he referred to as his complaints department.
I tell you, man, when I was reading your book, Sunny Skies and Shady Characters, it was better than any murder mystery police book because I know the characters.
And it was real.
Mm-hmm.
It was real. I knew because I was running a nightclub while I was still in the Marine Corps because I was bored, so I just ran this nightclub at night. And at 11 o'clock, the creatures come out. And so by 4 o'clock in the morning in Waikiki, the creatures were out in mass. And I tell you, it's a whole nother world. So when Jim Dooley was writing his book, I'm going, holy mackerel. And you went in there to talk to him about corruption? Are you kidding me?
He was not happy, I'll say that. But, he just made a lot of noise about it, but nothing beyond that.
You're lucky. You're lucky. Like I said, you still have feet, And then my father, I'd come back from Vietnam, and my father was unemployed because Governor Burns and Ariyoshi had him blacklisted because he ran against him.
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned a character in your book, a guy named Larry Mayhow.
Yes.
Who was Larry Mayhow?
Larry Mayhow was a really, really interesting, kind of amazing, accomplished fellow. He was he started off as he was a police officer for many years.
Of course, and so was the governor.
Yes, Governor Burns, and that's where they first got to know each other. But Mayhow was well known as as kind of a street justice kind of cop. Don't mess around. And you'll be sorry. Very accomplished martial artist, and was well known in Japan as a sumo wrestler of all things. But then later on, quit law enforcement and acquired what grew into be the largest, security guard company in the state, and immediately started landing very large and lucrative contracts with the state to provide guard services at various places, including all the airports in the state.
Yeah, and for TV shows like Hawaii Five-0 and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And so what I'm getting at here, ladies and gentlemen, the theme of this show is courage. And the question is, how much courage do you have? Or are you going to be... When we come back, you'll be finding out how much courage people like Councilman Sal DeCiccio and Jim Dooley have, and about standing up to corruption. We'll be right back.
You're listening to The Rich Dad Radio Show with Robert Kiyosaki.
Thanks for tuning in to The Rich Dad Radio Show. If you like what you're hearing, go to iTunes or Android, subscribe to the show, and leave a rating and review to help other financially minded people like you find The Rich Dad Radio Show. Thanks for tuning in, and keep on learning.
And now, The Rich Dad Radio Show and the Rich Dad Company voicemail box are proud to present Rich Dad's #1 fans.
I don't have to leave my name and number because I think you're all suck blue. Don't think you know anything about the economy. You just got a radio show. So I would like it that you just shut the up about Obama and the stock market because you need both of them. So just put that in your pipe and smoke it. Dumbasses. Bye.
Rich Dad's #1 fans.
Every business owner and real estate investor needs asset protection. Entities like LLCs, S or C Corps are vital to protect yourself and your business. Let Corporate Direct guide you through the process of forming a corporation or LLC. Corporate Direct is owned by Rich Dad advisor Garrett Sutton and is Robert Kiyosaki's choice for corporate formation. Mention Rich Dad and receive $100 off a formation. Call 800-600-1760. That's 800-600-1760. Or visit online at corporatedirect.com. That's corporatedirect.com.
It pays to listen. Now back to Robert Kiyosaki and the Rich Dad Radio Show.
As John Wayne said, courage is being scared to death and standing up anyway. So my poor dad, he stood up to Governor Ariyoshi and Governor Burns. He says, I'm not going to put up with your corruption anymore. All of these payoffs have got to end. So my dad, poor dad, in the 1970s, I was in flight school in Florida at the time, getting ready to go to Vietnam, and my dad says, I'm going to basically commit suicide. I'm going to take on the governor and the lieutenant governor of Hawaii. I just took a deep breath, and my old man, he ran as a Republican, which is suicidal in Hawaii. He may as well run as a communist in Hawaii. But anyway, he ran for lieutenant governor as a Republican. He got crushed. He never got his job back. He was blacklisted from Hawaii. My mother died immediately after that because she couldn't stand it. Because, here's my father, the head of education for Hawaii. She was in the social circle, the governor and his staff and all their wives and the lieutenant governor. She was in the in crowd. And suddenly, because my old man had the guts to stand up and say, I'm not going to put up with this anymore, She got ostracized by her friends, and she died about 3 months after the election. And that's why this radio program is dedicated to courage, because if we're going to make any changes in the world, can't be and there's too many. You know, how did this guy Barack Obama with $200,000 in student loan debt become, you know, president of the United States and leave a multimillionaire? I mean, something happened. There was a transition in there. You know, and why did he let Iran have $150 billion from a Swiss account, and $150 to the biggest terrorist organization country in the world? The biggest exporter of terrorism is Iran. I'm not Republican or Democrat, but Obama's from Hawaii. That's what I'm trying to get at. We're corrupt. And then he releases all those guys in Guantanamo. Then people, I'm not Republican or Democrat, but people get upset with Trump for twitting. I'm going, holy mackerel, what is wrong? And it's because we don't have the courage to speak up. We let our media and all this run this stuff along. So today we have one of my favorite books now is called Sunny Skies and Shady Characters, and it's Jim Dooley. He is an investigative reporter, and he wrote about what my father stood up against. So it's been like 40 years afterwards. But Jim, I just wish my poor dad had read your book, because he lost everything, his friends, family. Nobody would talk to him. And our other guest is Sal DeCiccio, who's also a nutcase. He's taken on Teamsters, labor unions, and his own political cronies in the city council of Phoenix. So, Jim, again, why did you write Sunny Skies and Shady Characters? Because what you did, you know, just starting the story of Don Ho, like I said, when I was in the Marine Corps, I was still managing a nightclub at the Ilikai in Honolulu, Waikiki. That was, you walked into the den. Why'd you do it?
I think it's the obligation of newspaper reporters to shine lights in the dark corners of society. You know, let people know what's happening out there. You know, and that was kind of what I was doing. I mean, I was just kind of blundering around. I didn't really stop to think about dangers or anything like that. It was really fun and interesting. You know, it's just I had a great time.
Did you ever have your life threatened?
A couple of times, but nothing really terribly serious. That I took seriously. Once I had to talk to a guy's kind of mob boss that said, "Hey, you want to get this guy under control. He's sort of making noises about hurting me," and that went away really quickly. The threats that I always took seriously, and certainly my editors took seriously, was threats of a lawsuit. That scared my editors.
Yeah, lawsuit is more. Anyway, Sal, here in Phoenix, you've been threatened, haven't you?
Oh, totally.
Why? Who are you taking on? What are they afraid of? Why are you threatening these guys?
Well, it's not just. It's the entire establishment that you have in. That's basically ingrained. And this is how they do it. They give their friends, their pals, big contracts, and then those pals end up protecting those people in government, and the people in government get what they want out of it because they get more money every single year. It's all the circular cronyism. Yeah, that's exactly what it is, Robert. The story of your father was horrid, and it does happen. And I think that's what the public needs to understand, is that there are very few people like your dad.
Or you.
Well,
or
nothing
Jim.
like what's happened with your dad. Boy, I'll tell you, that was a horrible story. But from my end, we had some of the guys, they would send out pictures of my family car. They would take pictures of it, other than scratching it, and just basically marking it up. But then they would send pictures to us just to make sure that we knew that they were out there. They would drive by my home. They would call my wife at home. Some of them, they would even put my wife on TV. They would attack her. I mean, the Taliban never did stuff like that. They never went after someone's family. But these people that are ingrained,
and
these
these
people
are the
that are
Teamsters
entrenched,
or union guys.
the union guys, yeah, the government union guys primarily. A lot of them were firefighters too, because they were. I mean, I had one situation where I was out to family with my family to dinner. We don't go out that much, but the kids were a lot younger then. And this one guy basically came up to me and said he was a firefighter, and he said, "What would it be like if I didn't get service to my home one day?" And that was a very serious threat. And I told him, I told my daughter, I said, "Go to your mommy real quick." And I turned to him, I said, "You've got 5 seconds to get out of here because we're both going to be in the newspaper tomorrow." I said, "You cannot threaten my family and scare my child."
Right.
And the guy left the restaurant.
So let me leave you another quote here. It says, "It takes a great deal of courage to stand up to your enemy." And for me, going to Vietnam, and that took courage. but he says it takes even more courage to stand up to your friends. That was Harry Potter who said that one, you know. And so, you know what I mean? There's a lot of people who just let corruption go. Like, you know, the SEC, they spend more, the Securities Exchange Commission, they spend more time watching porno than they do protecting us from the stock market crooks. You know, that is corruption when you're getting paid just for the salary and for the benefits, but you're not doing a job. You're watching porno. And you can look all this stuff up on the web. It's there. Guys are talking about it. Say, this is what's happening. So Jim, in Hawaii, we have a thing called Bishop Estate. And the people you talked about in there are my father's friends. And he stood up to them. And he says, you guys are ripping off the school kids of Hawaii. And then you wrote something, which is my question to you, my personal question, from your book, Sunny Skies and Shady Characters. You mentioned that some of the Supreme Court justices of Hawaii were caught up in that Bishop Estate school, Kamehameha school scandal or something like that?
Yeah. Well, you know, the Bishop Estate it's a unique institution. It's actually more commonly known now as Kamehameha Schools. But it was established by a member of the Hawaiian monarchy and endowed with vast tracts of land, some of which is the most valuable land on Earth in Waikiki and elsewhere. And as a result of having all that money, the princess who established the school said that they should be operated for the benefit of children of Hawaiian ancestry, and it grew into a multi-billion-dollar institution. It's got lots of money, and the way the princess set up her will said that the trustees of the estate who operate the schools and manage the assets should be appointed by the justices of the Hawaii Supreme Court, acting in a private capacity, not in an official capacity. Well, that then meant that some of the most powerful institutions and influences in the state of Hawaii coalesced, converged at the Bishop Estate, money and politics and justice and like that. And over the years, when I first started writing about the Bishop Estate, it was run by retired politicians and political figures and who are collecting more than $1 million a year in annual compensation.
And those are my father's friends.
Oh my gosh, that is insane.
Sal, it was so corrupt.
That is insane.
Oh, and it gets better or worse depending on your point of view. At one point, the Bishop Estate owned a very large investment in Goldman Sachs, and later sold that for a triple their money and made $1 billion on the sale. It's just an amazing institution.
Well, I sat down. I was reading your book. I was reading with my personal attorney. Did you basically say that many of the Supreme Court justices were influenced by Bishop Estate?
Well, they were in business with the estate. It's and their excuse. I mean, the Chief Justice of the Hawaii Supreme Court had. Let me see if I remember this. At least 2 very lucrative commercial real estate leases of land that was owned by the Bishop Estate when he was a circuit court judge, and then when he was appointed to the Supreme Court, and then when he was appointed to be the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, he held those leases and was making lots of money. He also operated a restaurant in Waikiki in a shopping center that was owned and operated by the Bishop Estate. At the same time, he was helping to pick the trustees of the estate, and they said, well, the Bishop Estate has a pervasive influence, throughout Hawaii, which is more or less true. So it's impossible to get away from it or to declare a conflict because you can't get away from it. And that was. So
for those who may not understand this, that's like President Trump just appointed somebody to the Supreme Court of America. That would be like those guys working for Trump. When you think about that, you go, there's something funny going on here. So those who are just tuning in, this is Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show. We're talking about corruption and, more importantly, courage. And my poor dad was a poor man simply because he was a PhD. He ran the school system for Hawaii, but Kamehameha Schools is a private school system. And his friends were the most corrupt guys in Hawaii, and he couldn't stand it anymore. So he went out in 1969 when I was in flight school in Florida. He says, son, I can't take it anymore. So he stood up. I'm basically going to commit suicide. And he did. As I said, when he lost, he got crushed. His friend said, we can't back you. We cannot back you because we lose our jobs. And that crushed my father. And then my mother died, like I said, 2 or 3 months right after that, simply because she couldn't take the ostracism, being thrown out. So today's Rich Dad Radio program is about courage. Do you have the courage to stand up? I'll repeat the thing again. It says, as Harry Potter said, it takes a great deal of courage to stand up to your enemies, but it takes more courage to stand up to your friends. And that's what my poor dad did. That's what Jim Dooley is doing in Sunny Skies and Shady Characters. That's what Sal DeCiccio is doing here in Phoenix. They have the courage to stand up, where most people ignore it because they're chicken. So, Sal, any other comments? What's going on in Phoenix?
What your dad saw, and this is how it works. He got into the inside, and he didn't like what he saw.
Oh, yeah.
And he was disgusted by it. And that is exactly what's happening. You have all these individuals that are the beneficiaries. No one protects the common guy anymore. It's just not that way.
Everybody's out for themselves.
It's shocking to me.
Yep.
So you have these insiders, the beneficiaries, the people that profit off of this. They give these lucrative contracts.
Is that going on in Washington, D.C. also?
Oh, I would imagine it's going on everywhere. I bet it's going on in Boise, Idaho. I think it's happening everywhere. Yeah. Because it's all insider-driven, Robert.
Okay, once again, the sword of the Rich Dad Show today is about courage. Do you have the courage to stand up, or are you going to be a bark? So we've been going more into what corruption is going on, how it's going on right in front of you, probably by some of your friends or some of the people you work with. Your friends stealing from the company you work with. Are you afraid of speaking up because you might get fired? Today's program at Rich Dad Radio is about courage.
You're listening to the Rich Dad Radio Show with Robert Kiyosaki.
Rich Dad Coaching offers a phenomenal variety of services and custom strategies, all aimed at ensuring a secure, comfortable, and rich future for you and your family. Now you can get weekly access to exclusive Rich Dad coaching services through our live stream events. Go to richdad.com and click on the on-demand banner at the top of the homepage. Great new videos are updated regularly. Get inside knowledge and insights from Robert Kiyosaki himself, Rich Dad coaching professionals, and more. Go to richdad.com and click on the on-demand banner at the top of the homepage.
This is the Rich Dad Radio Show, the good news and bad news about money. Here's Robert Kiyosaki.
Welcome back, Robert Kiyosaki, the good news and bad news about money. Again, this radio program is about having the courage to stand up, or you're going to be chicken little. And I would say 99% of the people are chicken little because they don't want to lose their jobs, they don't offend their friends. And then they wonder why there's so much corruption. So without courage, there's going to be corruption. Then we wonder why we're going to hell in a handbasket right now. And this is global. This is global. Every place I go to, I was in Malaysia and then in South Africa, and those guys are just sucking money out of the system hand over fist. So is Goldman Sachs and the banks, and oh my God. But we don't say anything about it. So once again, you can listen to the Rich Dad Radio Show anytime, anywhere on iTunes or Android, and all of our programs are archived at richdadradio.com. We archive them so you can listen to them again, because we're an educational program, not political or religious. And you can listen to the program again, because when you listen to a program again, you pick up even more, get more insights, and then you can talk to your friends and neighbors about being chickens. Anyway, our guest today, our Councilman Sal DeCiccio, is a personal friend. And I was in Honolulu about a few months ago, and I came across this book. It said Sunny Skies and Shady Characters by Jim Dooley. Please get the book. It's about cops, killers, and corruption. And cops and killers and corruption, they're all the same characters. They're all politicians, most of the politicians. The governor was a cop, and the underworld's a cop, and and then there's the Teamsters unions. And Hawaii is so corrupt, it's incredible. It's the number one biggest gambling state in the world, because every Japanese guy and Chinese guy is a gambler, and that's why the Yakuza, which is the Japanese underground, runs the place over there. And Hawaii is 100% Democratic, because no Republican dares run against that machine. So when I saw Sunny Skies and Shady Characters, I really appreciate what Jim Dooley did, because he explained why my poor dad in the 70s ran against the machine. My dad had the courage to stand up, and he got crushed on this whole thing. So Sal DiCiccio stands up and all this. And Jim, I don't know how you're still alive, but some of the people you mentioned, I know who they are. You really are lucky to be alive because they're dangerous people. But they're nice people, in front of you. What about our Mayor Fosse? He was out and out corrupt, but everybody loved him anyway, right?
He was a very, very, very colorful man. When I first started working as a newspaper reporter for the morning paper in Hawaii. He was the mayor, and I got a call from a whistleblower, and who said that he had information about the mayor and some of his activities, and in fact he did. He and his friends worked for a private developer that had reached.
Sound familiar, Sal?
Yeah.
Sal and I both Sal and I are real estate guys, and it's always the same story. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. And they provided me with information about a redevelopment project called Kukui Plaza, which had been built, and the developer had reached and was paying off a lot of money in a lot of forms to the mayor and his campaign organization. And as a result of those stories, the mayor was eventually indicted on bribery charges. The developer was indicted in federal court on fraud charges. But the developer, who was supposed to be the main witness against the mayor, decided that he didn't want to testify. So the charges against the mayor were eventually dropped. But that was my beginning as an investigative reporter in Hawaii, and the mayor was not happy with me. So I kind of left the City Hall beat as a result of that. But,
so when you read Sunny Skies and Shady Characters, I mean, this is going on wherever you live today. I mean, it's not just in Hawaii. And Hawaii is 100% Democrat. There's not a Republican alive in that state now. And a lot of the names you mentioned, are friends of mine too. And I'm going, holy mackerel. They're my classmates, just like my father's. So the question to all of you is, do you have the guts to stand up to your friends? Like I wrote an article for Hawaii Business, and I got crucified for that just because I said Hawaii was so corrupt. I couldn't do business there. I was a small business guy in Hawaii. And I said, you guys are a bunch of crooks, because I wouldn't pay them off. And I just basically left the state. I just couldn't put up with it. So the same thing goes on here, right, Sal?
Oh, yeah, it does. Can I ask you, Jim, may I ask you a question on this? You said that was one of your first stories that you did on the mayor, and then you were no longer on the City Hall beat. Were you shifted off because of that?
I became a full-time investigative reporter as a result of that.
Yeah, because I had a situation one time several years ago where I was going after a project that the newspaper was an investor in at the time. And the one reporter, and I exposed a lot of the stuff that was going on, basically the backroom dealings. And this one reporter called me up and he said, Sal, don't get me in any trouble here. I said, it's your choice, Tony, if you want to write it or not. I said, but I'm going to come out with it. And it was interesting. It was an interesting conversation.
It's it's everywhere. I mean, corruption, greed, it's part of human nature. You're never going to get rid of it. You just kind of got to guard against it. That's all.
Yeah.
So, and like I said, for me, it was a guarantee of work. I mean, I had too many stories to chase.
Yeah. So it was my dad. Again, my dad stood up, and his best friends, who are corrupt, Bishop Estate and the legal system and the teachers' unions and all that, said, we have to go against you. So it's not about friendship, is it, Jim?
No, and I have to say, it's really hard to be a whistleblower. You're just asking for trouble. I mean, when I'm retired now, but when I was a reporter, I was well into my career. I would have to sit down and tell people, look, you got to think very seriously about doing this. In fact, if I were you, I wouldn't say anything because it's going to jam you up in the end, and it nearly always did. People, they don't. I don't know if it's peculiar to Hawaii. I don't think it's peculiar to this state, but they don't like whistleblowers, and they take it out. Even if what you've done is a good thing and it's for the benefit of society, you get repercussions for it.
Well, let me tell you, Jim, and what Robert was saying here. I think this is a note that I've heard throughout, and it does. The people that come to you and tell you not to do this are your friends. And because they have some sort of interest in what's going on. it's fascinating because I'm hearing everything that happened to his father is the same. I see it from the inside. You saw it from the outside. But the stuff that's going on that went on with his father happens every day. And it's people I know, my contributors, my friends. You would think that they're your allies, but they're really not. No, they're not. And they come to you and they'll say, hey, why are you doing this? This is going to hurt you long term. You shouldn't be doing that. It's constant. It is a constant barrage. But, it's interesting. I had one of the top editors at one time. He was my chief of staff for several years. And, he was talking to one of his reporter friends. And he's just an amazing guy. I mean, but one of the conversations he had, he said, hey, we've always believed it was bad. How is it? I mean, what's it like working on the inside? Because he had an actual view from the inside, Jim. And the response back was, it's worse than you can think.
Yeah, I had a friend of mine who was actually a government. Well, he's a law enforcement investigator. I can't give you his name, but he said, I'm tired of looking at this stuff from the outside. He eventually became an appointed official in state government, and to sort of see how it really worked from the inside. And then he told me later he got so disgusted by that he quit and he went into business for himself.
Okay, once again, it's Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show, and we're talking to Councilman Sal DeCiccio, a personal friend. We're working on a lot of projects together. But also we have the Jim Dooley. He is an investigative reporter out of Hawaii. He wrote the book Sunny Skies and Shady Characters. You want a book that reads, it's a true murder mystery. It's a true corruption mystery. It's a true story about real crooks in the state of Hawaii. And they're still there. I know a lot of them. I know most of them, in fact. They were my father's friends, and that's why he had to stand up against them. And again, I'll tell you what Harry Potter says. It takes a great deal of courage to stand up to your enemies, but it takes a lot more courage to stand up to your friends. And we're talking about courage. And we wonder why there's corruption in the world, because most people don't have the guts. And that's what makes me nauseous. That's why, one of the reasons I left Hawaii, I mean, I love Hawaii, I love the people and all that, but I just couldn't stand the corruption that I knew. I saw it. My father was telling me about it. I read about these guys in the paper because guys like Jim Dooley would write about them and nobody would do anything. Wasn't it kind of sometimes frustrating, Jim? People just didn't know why you were doing it?
Yeah, although, I kind of came to the realization that it wasn't my job, my job is basically to find stuff out and put it out in front of people. If people wanted to do something about it, well, that was up to them. Because if I got too invested in seeing, somebody, this guy's a crook, he should be in jail, he should be in prison, nothing ever happened, I would get too frustrated to continue. So I basically said, look, I just find it out and put it out there. That's my job.
So has anything happened to you since you wrote Sunny Skies and Shady Characters from people around you?
No.
People don't pay much attention.
Sorry, I wish I could, I could spice it up a little bit, but it's certainly lots of. The book has been very popular. By the way, a little bit of plugola here. You can get it at Amazon.com. It's a lot of people have said that that they bought it simply because they know people in the index and all sorts of friends and and relatives and it's really. I tried to make it interesting for people that live in Hawaii and who want to come to Hawaii or who wonder about Hawaii. I think there's something in there. I try to put something in there for everybody. So,
but it's a great political corruption murder mystery book, but it's about the truth. And my frustration is, all my friends in Hawaii is most people do nothing about it. But that's also here in Phoenix, right?
Oh, totally. It's because at the end of the day, these people that pretend to be your friends, people believe that they are when in fact that they're not, because they want to protect their insider status.
Well, as my father's lieutenant said to him, I don't want to lose my job.
That's exactly true.
And he was as crooked as they came, but he says, I have to do it because I don't want to lose my job. And my father said, to hell with you guys, I quit. And I'm going to run against you, Burns and Ariyoshi. And that's where Larry May Howe comes in. For those who don't know him, he was like talking to, the Godfather there. And that guy...
Well, he was accused of being the Godfather at one point. Godfather of organized crime in Hawaii. That was an allegation. It was never proved, but that's how he was known.
But it was Ariyoshi's buddy.
Yeah, he's a very
the
good
governor's
friend.
Fun.
and chief, one of his main fundraisers,
yeah.
and he organized all the musical entertainment, for the governor at all of his rallies, because he was very very influential in Waikiki.
And every time you go through Honolulu Airport, all the hotels, or you watch Hawaii Five-0, that's all corrupt money. And if you understand that, you get how Hawaii runs. And I want to blame I want to talk to my friends there, is because we don't speak up. We don't speak up. We just let it go on. So final words here, Sal, why do you speak up?
You're just driven that way. It's interesting because I talk to other friends of mine that believe the same way, but they just don't want to create any. Well, I got to tell you, too. I mean, I know how much hell my wife went through in the last election we went. It was horrible. And it was about 4 years of just constant terror. Everywhere we went, it was constantly.
Yeah. And I don't know if you know this, but they came to visit me because of you, too.
I heard.
Yeah.
I didn't know all the details, but I did hear about it.
So anyway, it's and these are government employees.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
They're government. They're your friends and neighbors.
It's
firemen, police officers, and these guys.
It's all the people that are finding ways to benefit off other people, other taxpayers.
And so you have a white paper on what's going on in Phoenix. How did they get that white paper?
And the best place to get my paper if they want to, it's the easiest way is just to go on my Facebook page. It's Councilman Sal DiCiccio, and it's spelled DiCiccio. And go on Facebook. It's just a lot easier.
So say it one more time.
Go on my Facebook page. It's Councilman Sal DiCiccio, and it's spelled DiCiccio.
So again, Jim, sunny skies, shady characters. Why do you say what you say?
Well, because I think it's important for people to understand, the how things work in government, and in politics and in law enforcement. There's lots of, and if you don't pay attention to what's happening in those areas, and then we're all lost because we'll get swallowed up and buried by the bad guys. But
there are friends. There are friends.
Yeah.
There are politicians.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, Jim, I'd like to have you back, and Councilman Sal DiCiccio, I'd like to have you back, too, because this is a subject that goes on all over the world. I was told to shut up in Malaysia because I was talking about that guy who stole, he had $3.2 billion in his personal savings account. I mean, he may be a good thief, but he doesn't know how to steal money. That was his problem. But anyway, this is going all over the world because people lack the courage to speak up to corruption. So I want to thank the two of you. And we come back. We've been going to our most popular part of our program, which is Ask Robert.
You're listening to the Rich Dad Radio Show with Robert Kiyosaki.
Every business owner and real estate investor needs asset protection. Entities like LLCs, S or C Corps are vital to protect yourself and your business. Let Corporate Direct guide you through the process of forming a corporation or LLC. Corporate Direct is owned by Rich Dad advisor Garrett Sutton and is Robert Kiyosaki's choice for corporate formation. Mention Rich Dad and receive $100 off a formation. Call 800-600-1760. That's 800-600-1760. Or visit online at corporatedirect.com. That's corporatedirect.com.
The key to achieving your dreams is to develop a rich mindset instead of an excuse mindset. Instead of saying, I can't afford that, ask yourself, how can I afford that? It's amazing how a simple shift in thinking can open a world of new ideas and endless possibilities. Let the Rich Dad Company help kickstart your journey to financial freedom. Robert Kiyosaki and the Rich Dad Company have compiled Robert's top secrets to creating a rich mindset, now available in a 10-minute ebook, How to Achieve a Rich Mindset. This offer is available for a limited time only, so get yours today. Get your free ebook, How to Achieve a Rich Mindset. Go to richdad.com and look for the banner. Again, this is available only for a few days, so act fast. Go to richdad.com and look for the How to Achieve a Rich Mindset banner.
Log on to richdadradio.com while you listen. Now back to Robert Kiyosaki.
Welcome back, Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show, the good news and bad news about money. The question is, do you have courage or are you just Chicken Little? And the reason we have so much corruption in the world is because I would say 98% of the people are chicken. They don't want to say anything. They don't want to speak up. I don't want to lose my job. I don't want to offend my friends and all that. And that's why today we had some great guests. One is James Dooley, worked as United Press International reporter in Honolulu, and later joined the Honolulu Advertiser. He's the author of Sunny Skies, Shady Characters, Cops, Killers, and Corruption. He's talking about the governor of Hawaii. I think that's kind of funny because my father had the courage to stand up to the governors of Hawaii, and my father lost everything, including his wife. She could not take what happened to them. But most people don't have the guts to stand up, and 99% of the people in Hawaii are good people, but most of them don't stand up. They just go along, get along. They go to Vegas, they gamble, and they actually support organized crime. It's called the Yakuza and all that. So Hawaii, in my opinion, is one of the more corrupt states in the Union, but all here, that's why I had Councilman Sal DeCiccio. And you don't have to look too far in Arizona for corruption. There's a lot of it everywhere, all over the world. Look at South Africa. This guy Zuma. I don't know how he gets away with what he does, but there's a lot of people like what he does because they get rich over him. And look at Putin. Putin is the richest guy on earth. Well, did he earn it the old-fashioned way, or did he do it through corruption? We'll never know, but I have an idea on that. And also there's President Obama, a poor man who was $200,000 in debt, student loan debt when he ran for president, and now he's a multi-millionaire. How did that happen? Was it corruption or good looks? I mean, what was it? Of course, President Obama is Hawaii. And of course, there was the Clinton Trust Fund, that suddenly disappeared after the election. So was that corruption, or was it just they got tired of, they didn't want to collect millions of dollars in political favors? So anyway, the only reason there's corruption is because good people don't have the courage to stand up and to speak. So trust this Rich Dad radio show has encouraged some of you to speak up, to not just go along and get along. And remember, evil persists when good people do nothing. And that's why the story of Sunny Skies, Shady Characters, Cops, Killers, and Corruption, you don't need to read a Jim Patterson book. This is a true story about real cops, killers, and corruption. It's called The Governors of Hawaii, plus the Supreme Court justices, plus the mayor, plus all those guys. I mean, Jim Dooley wrote a great book. It is exciting to read, and it's a true story, not fiction. So, Melissa, what's the plus? And also remember Councilman Sal DeCicio's paper. It's really interesting how the city managers are now going to increase the pension by $2.3 billion because that's how they get rich, through pensions. And that's why low-income housing in Phoenix is more expensive than the best real estate in the rest of Phoenix. But they sell it to poor people because good people don't stand up. So now coming to Ask Robert. You can submit your questions to AskRobert@RichDadRadio.com. So, Melissa, what's the first question?
Our first question today, Robert, comes from Samuel in Atlanta, Georgia. Favorite book, Midas Touch. He says, Robert, I work in the business department of the company I work for. I see some major improprieties occurring in the accounting department. I feel as if I should speak up, but I'm concerned it would cost me my job, so I'm staying quiet. Any advice on how I should handle this?
That's a fantastic question, appropriate for this program. But I think you heard Jim Dooley say it. He says all of his years it's best not to say anything because people don't care. I think that's really the problem, is that people will just go along, get along. Most people, it's like when my father stood up and ran against Governor Ariyoshi and Governor Burns because Larry Mayhow, the king of organized crime, was their personal friend, ex-cops. If you understand that, nobody cares. Nobody cares. So that's really your danger. But I have a quote from you. It says, only you can take your inner freedom from yourself. No one else can. So I just suggest you find a way of speaking up without being an idiot about it. And I want to say something else. Personally, I'm more like my poor dad, is that when Rich Dad, Poor Dad came out, one of the first people that came to get me was Money Magazine. They sent a cub reporter, and I was down in a church, Bishop Eddie Long's church in Atlanta, Georgia, and she wrote in Money Magazine that I went there and stole from poor black people, when she knows I left about $30,000 there. I took no money, charged no money. But our media is corrupt, very, very corrupt. So I agree with President Trump. Very, very, very corrupt. Why did this young reporter write that? Because she has to. Because Wall Street is one of the most corrupt organizations. Now, I'm not saying they're bad people, but they're just doing their job of taking money from people. So It's up to you. The reason we have financial education is not to avoid Wall Street, but to understand the game and play the game smartly. So you have corruption in your own company, let your conscience be your guide, but don't be stupid about it. Next question, Melissa.
Our next question comes from Brittany in San Antonio, Texas. Favorite book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. She says, I'm ready to step up and launch my own online store. I'm not afraid of failing and have worked hard to establish my business. The problem is it's hard for me to tune out the negativity and naysayers in my life. How do you handle people around you that say you can't do something?
Well, that's a personal self-esteem problem, okay? And today's show is on corruption. And for those of you who want to find out more about the power of corruption, does it pay or not pay? Does it pay not to stay quietly? Remember that person we had, Melissa?
Yes,
He wrote the book Lucifer's Bank.
Yes,
Brad
Birkenfeld.
He was a whistleblower. Mm-hmm. He stood up. Mm-hmm. Guess what? He got convicted.
That's right.
He blew the whistle on all the corruption inside the banking system, and he goes to jail. But there was a good happy ending to the story, isn't there? There
was a happy ending to the story. He had the largest payout, I believe, in U.S. history. And if people want to go back and listen to that show, Robert, they can find it at richdadradio.com. And it aired on May 6th, and it's titled Rich Bank, Poor Bank for that episode that people want to go back and listen to.
Yeah, so sometimes it pays off. So to answer your question is, who cares what people think? When I wrote Rich Dad, Poor Dad, everybody said I was nuts too. Why are you writing a book that nobody wants to read? So my lesson, my message is to everybody, what the heck makes you want to get up in the morning? What's worth standing up for? If you're going to find a mission in life, it's really not about money. Your personal mission is to find a cause and support your fellow human beings or the environment that's important to you. And who cares what your friends and family think? They're a bunch of idiots anyway. My friends and family don't really like my books. They don't listen to me. They think I'm crazy talking about, I don't save money. I don't have mutual funds. I don't have ETFs. And that's why Money Magazine and the rest of Wall Street's money machine comes after me. Now, there's good people that always stand up too. Like CNBC has been very, very good to me, so has Fox and Friends. But the issue here is you've got to have guts. You've got to have courage. Don't do something yet be afraid of other people think of you. Because they're chickens anyway. Next question, Melissa.
Our next question comes from Diana in Dubai. Favorite book, Midas Touch. What's your take on those with demanding jobs who are caught in the rat race of chasing a paycheck but would like to leave and start their own business? How do you take the first step?
Well, the answer was answered already. You better find something that's of importance to you. Like we have Jim Dooley, he wrote that book, Sunny Sky, Shady Characters. He doesn't have to do that. But because he did it, he stands up, I'll stand up with him. Same as Councilman DeCiccio. He stands up, I'll stand up with him. I wrote Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Money Magazine wanted to take me down. A lot of magazines want to take me down because they're corrupt. Look at the SEC. They never whistleblowed on any of those guys who ripped off trillions of dollars from the system. But nobody says anything. They pay them bonuses. Look at Obama. He gives Iran 100. I'm not Republican or Democrat. I don't anti-Obama and all this. He pays Iran $150 billion coming with Lucifer's Bank. That guy, what was his name?
Brad Birkenfeld.
Yeah, he talks about how that money came out of a private account in Switzerland. But nobody questions Obama. He paid Iran, the biggest exporter of terrorism in the world, $150 billion. But we get upset with President Trump for tweeting. ¿Qué pasa, man? What's really going on in this world? So if you don't stand up and at least have some courage, you'll always be more concerned about your friends and family and be a chicken little coward, afraid of what people think. If you fail, if you make a mistake, you might hurt somebody's feelings. Look, the song is called If I Had a Hammer. When you have a business, you have a chance of starting a hammer and saying something. So you can submit your questions to AskRobert@RichDadRadio.com. Again, thanks to James Dooley, author of Sunny Sky, Shady Characters, Cops, Killers, and Corruption in the Aloha State. And it's funny, he's writing about the governor, Cops, Killers, and Corruption. And also Sal DeCiccio. He's a councilman here in Phoenix. And his white paper, go to Councilman Sal DeCiccio, facebook.com. Thank you for listening to the Rich Dad Radio program.